a little bit, about a third of your clay, and set it to the side. We're going to need that later. And then for the pinch pot part, you want to start making it kind of into a ball. Right? You can even roll it on your desk a little if you wanted to. Okay. Find kind of the roughest spot, and then that's where I push my thumb in, so it'll stick on your thumb. And then remember, for a pinch pot, we start pinching between our thumb and our outside fingers. I kind of make this motion with my thumb inside as I'm going around to widen it so it gets a little bit bigger as I go. Every once in a while you could smooth out the top, just like that. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth because we'll end up putting a little bit of texture on our pinch pot animals. But I think today I'm going to work on making a peacock. I'm studying animals in India right now, and a peacock is one of their main symbols for their nation. I'll smooth it out, and it's going to sit this way so that when I'm looking at it, it'll be like this with its neck and its tail feathers. I'm going to set this to the side and get my extra clay. I have my slip and my scoring tool, a scratchy tool, and the first thing I want to focus on is the biggest part, and that's going to be the tail feathers. So I'm going to pinch off probably 2/3 of this and a third for the neck and the head. And those tail feathers kind of fan out on a peacock. So I want to pinch this a little bit to get it flat on one side and pointy on this side. And then I can use my hands and my fingers. I can start spreading it out a little bit, like that, for my tail feathers. And then I can take my scoring tool or a pencil or any sharp tool, and then I can kind of cut a little tail feather pattern in there. Okay, sort of like that, and I can take off the extra pieces. And then I know each of these becomes a tail feather, and I kind of go on the side. I don't go straight up and down because I don't want all the extra clay to get lumpy and bumpy when I do this. So if I go sideways a little bit with my tool, kind of flat, that'll help keep it smooth. And then peacocks have those neat little eyes, right? Kind of at the top of each tail. So I can do a little starburst pattern to sort of make those eyes in there. And this will show up a lot better when I do my glazing with my colors. But for now, we'll just do a little pattern in there with some texture. And then if I want to make these really fancy, I can very gently draw the center of each of those feathers, and I can add in some feather texture to each side. And feathers tend to be a little angled. They kind of go sideways at a, like that. Or your other option would be to leave this plain, and then you can work on painting those in with the glaze. I always like my clay to have a little bit of a texture in it though. Helps to hold the glaze in there too. Kind of like that. So I finished the tail part. I'm going to carefully peel that off the table. You can always do this on a paper towel so then you don't have to worry about it sticking to the tabletop like this one is a little bit. I'm going to put this over to the side so nothing happens to it. And then I'm going to work on my head. So peacocks kind of have the big thick part at the bottom, and then they get a skinny neck, and then they get a head that bends over. So it doesn't look like it yet. I'm going to work on it a little. I guess you could kind of say it almost even looks a little bit like a snake when you start working on it, right? Once in a while I get my finger a little wet. If I feel like the clay is drying out or it gets too many cracks, I can get it wet like this. Yep. And so again, keeping your fingers a little damp, not too wet. You don't want it to get super slimy, and kind of pinch where that bill is going to go for his beak. Okay. And then I'm going to start looking at attaching things. So if this is my peacock, I want this bowl to sit flat, so if I drop it gently, it'll flatten out that bottom for me really nicely, so I know it's going to sit. And then I'm going to attach this to here, but it's really bumped up. I don't want it to stay bumped up. Before we attach things, we always have to score. It means you have to rough it up like that. And it can't just be lines like that. You actually have to get it kind of sticky with something pokey. And then this back side's where it's going to stick on, right? So I have to do the same thing to the peacock in the back of him. And I get my finger wet, and I want to add a little bit of water on there. Not a whole bunch, and get some of this slimy stuff out of here. This slip, it's called slip. You can remember because it's slippery. And then those two rough spots have to be attached together. And then I can start smoothing the peacock's neck into the rest of his body. Kind of like that, especially if it's nice and wet with the slip. I can always get my finger a little bit more wet if I need to get it a little bit more slimy. So now it's starting to look a little bit more like a peacock, isn't it? Of course, we're going to need the tail. So if we're going to put the tail in the back, I have to score the back. Super important. This almost makes it like Velcro, and the slip that you put on it is like the glue. I'm going to rough this part up because that's the part that sticks to it. Remember, we're going to look at it the right direction. Put a little slip on there. Find that roughed up back part. Now pinch it together. Got a little extra on there. Pinch that tail feather on there, and then same thing as I did before. I want to smooth it into the pinch pot, like that. Smooth that a little bit up here on his tail. So now I have my peacock, and he's looking a little sideways. They like to do that, don't they? Sometimes, kind of like that. If I want to add in the side feathers, I can draw them on with my tools, kind of like this. I have a few extra feathers that sit out a little bit. I like that. And then if I do it on that side, I should probably do it on this side too. And I'm being very gentle when I'm holding this, so that I don't smush all of my pretty designs that I did on this side, right? And they might not look exactly the same. That's okay. Peacocks don't always rest their wings exactly the same on both sides. I like that. There we go. If I wanted to put little eyes in there, just do a little hole there, a little hole on that side. I'm going to put my initials on the bottom so I know which one's mine, and then I'm going to put it on the drying rack so that it gets fired.